So you might have you need to specify the relevant issues that you need to cover systematically and consistently, and then how you're gonna pursue details, and on what areas you need to clarify, or you need to have follow-up questions, and how, if there is kind of an awkward silence, how you are going to break, these kind of awkward situations and get people back into your interviews. So you need to prepare to have some sort of thematic topics, and then the subtopics. So, for example, if you need again to investigate social protest, but within social protest you need to investigate you're interested in student movements, for example, in Chile, and you write your research on it's not only the approach, you investigated this topic through a specific angle, which is framing. This is very it's a trend in literature that focuses mainly on the role of ideas and how actors or agency actually communicated ideas and transmitted these ideas and disseminated these ideas in society in order to attract more supporters and to kind of amplify the discourse in order to attract more supporters to the cause. So actually you need, this is your topic and this is your research, and you need to have these topic guides and what sort of themes or sub-themes you need to cover in order to make sure that you understand, that you have all the dimensions, or you collect consistently and systematically all the information needed in order to cover all the relevant issues with the right level of details. So let me give you some sort of some information about this framing thing. So it's mainly from the literature. Let's say you have theoretically, it says something like political actors, they have to offer they have to come up with this diagnostic thing, they have to come up with some sort of problems. The government actually or the policies are kind of inefficient, so that's why they decided to focus on educational policy and how the some sort of privatization and the withdrawal of the state from the educational domain actually motivated some students and other political actors to mobilize against the government. So they have to focus on this the problem, or to offer a diagnosis for these problems, and then they might have some strategies and tactics in order to mobilize or to motivate people in order to take to the streets or to vocalize their opinion, or to take their the anger or the kind of the criticism and the challenge they have against the government to some actual level, or to the action level. So actually, and then whether or not they manage to reach out to other participants in order to widen the scope of the frame, and in order to get some sort of some other adherents or sympathizers, or some other actors as well, that they might have, that they might benefit from another social policy. So then you should have some the guides you need to prepare in order to cover the main objectives, and then how you introduce the topic, and then the subtopics, and then the wording of the questions and the sub questions as well, or the propping, or the follow-up questions you can ask. That was this should be before you get there. So, for example, you need the main objectives So you have like to write down, you know, what you need, what kind of like issues or areas you need to collect data in order to cover. So for example, first you need to examine how they raise awareness regarding, you know, this social problem. And then to explore what kind of tactics and strategies they deployed in order to attract supporters, and then the reflections on how they perceive and bypass, you know, the party officials, why actually they opted for street politics, for example, rather than contacting, you know, some MPs, members of parliaments, in order to pressure the government or in order to enact the different social policies. Because actually, in order to challenge, you know, one social policy, you need like to get some sort of like political players that they are engaged in the political process, or they have access to decision-making circles in order to pressure or to push for different social policy. And then you need to understand how they build a network with other NGOs, like non-governmental organizations, in order to increase or intensify the pressures on their government. And then how what kind of factors, you know, that push them to negotiate after all with the government. So you need like like people took to the streets basically from like, you know, students in order to pressure, you know, the government in order to enact different social policies. And then they like it took like several waves, and then they ended up having kind of negotiations with the government. So how they achieved their goals, and how they diversified, you know, their tools and tactics in order to get, you know, to the point they wanted to reach. So firstly, you need to and these are your object, like the main goals you need to of conducting, you know, this field work in order to cover your topic. And then when you get there, you have to have like, you know, some introduction about the topic. And this introduction entails, you know, you have to, but not that way, like, you know, the main objectives, like, you know, you need to understand more about the social movements and social mobilization in Chile, and how actually because they have a history of like well-established political parties, and why they didn't use, you know, these institutional channels in order to push for different policy directions and different strategies. And then how the confidentiality of the research as well, it's kind of you need to make sure to assure them that it's kind of confidential, and you're going to use, you know, the data only for research purpose. And if you have like an interview for 24 minutes, or 45 minutes or an hour or something, you need to specify this in the very beginning, and ask them, you know, for a permission to take the interview. Usually they accept, but if they don't accept, so you have to take notes. So you have here, so here you have like, you specified the main objectives, or the dimensions you need to cover, and then the introductions, what kind of what points, you know, you need to what kind of points, you know, your introduction, you know, should include. And then you have like topics, the themes and the thematic topics and subtopics your research, you know, needs to consistently and systematically investigate. So first you have like background information. You need to know, like, you know, the like the university, the background, the educational background, for example, what universities, you know, or what faculties, you know, they are, and what faculties they enrolled, for example, and perhaps like income level, partisan affiliation, whether or not they are affiliated with political parties, some sort of like previous participation in political activities. So these kind of background information that I mean, like, as we mentioned, like these kind of questions, would put them at ease first before getting into some details, and it would help you later in order to link things up. And then you need to hear more about the reflection on or their definition of neoliberal educational policies, because sometimes, people, if they are like, especially those who are affiliated or they have kind of bonds with the political parties, they might have like some sort of ideological definition. So you need to make sure what kind of follow-up questions or clarifying questions you need to ask in order to get them to, in order to get some sort of information or explanations that would help or would feed back into your research, instead of like talking abstract. Because sometimes people who are like engaged in party activities, so they might give like they might steer the conversation away from your goals. So you need to bring them back to your topic. So actually you need to hear more about the reflections, how they define neoliberal educational policies. Because, for example, if the government asks students to get some loans from the bank in order to pay the tuition fees, and then they have to they don't offer like they didn't get them, or the government actually didn't, or the quality of the education didn't get them well prepared for the job market, so they have to to spend the entire life in order to pay the debt back. So you need to know how they actually define the neoliberal educational policies, and what kind of alternative policies they actually struggle for in order to pressure the government to implement. And then the history of the organization or the movement and the main goals, because as I mentioned, it took some waves, some secondary, like it took like in 2006, they actually, the secondary school students actually, they did protests in order to pressure the government. And then after 4 years, the same students, after joining universities, they had like another wave of protests in order to improve on the quality and the educational policy of the government. And then how they started out with the educational policies, and then they asked for some other political demands in order to get rid of the authoritarian heritage of Pinochet, by asking for amending the constitution, for example, and the electoral system, that actually the legacy of the authoritarian and the repressive regime of Pinochet. So actually you need to have some questions and sub-questions that would cover, this kind of networking and collaboration between different the student movements and other organizations. And then you need to make sure, what types of tools and tactics they deployed in order to gain supporters. So actually how they convinced, some other people that they might benefit from another alternative social policy. So that's why they got more supporters in order to pressure or to intensify the claims on the national government. And then the relations with the government, because you need to test, the conditions under which social movements would accept negotiations with the government, and the conditions under which they opted for this contentious strategy, and they refused any kind of negotiation with the government. So you need to have some questions in order to examine this, and relations with the political parties, because as I mentioned, they have this history of well-established party system, including left-leaning parties. So why actually they broke loose from their the parties they are affiliated with. So you need to examine if you have a question about if people are if they don't trust, or they actually are not satisfied with the existing political institutions, so they might resort to different other tactics or political channels in order to articulate their grievances and demands. And then if they have if you need to know with the type of framing, what kind of visions and plans that they have, whether or not they actually follow these contentious strategy, or like they participated in protests for the sake of protest, for ideological orientation, or for the sake of activism, or they actually have a vision or a plan to be implemented. So the main target was getting more supporters, widening or amplifying the discourse in order to get more supporters, and then how to influence political social policies, or the strategies of the government. And then you might have, like, you need to make sure about the sequence, as I mentioned, like to what ask about the organizations and these kind of behavior in the beginning, and then you can get to the attitudes and the motivations and some other sensitive issues or topics later. With the flow of the conversation, you might come up with different follow-up and other questions. You need to get more information and clarification from the participants, but you should have some sort of guidance before you start your work process. For example, here you need to, if you like the questions about the political parties and the relations with political parties, because now, if you remember, if you actually remembered from the last lecture, I mentioned something about the antagonism between different political parties in Chile that actually led to the collapse of the breakdown of Allende, or the democratic regime, and the installation of Pinochet, or the military regime in Chile. So they have this kind of hatred and the legacy of antagonism between different political players. So actually, if you need to bear in mind that perhaps when members of political parties, they might refer to this legacy of hatred between different ideological forces as well. So you need to have you need to think about the wording of the question, and what type of follow-up questions or propping you need to have in order to clarify or to seek or to get more information. And this legacy of authoritarianism as well. And if you have something if you have a question regarding the participation in the protest or the street politics, because sometimes the police or the intelligence might have their own spies participating in this in order to to make kind of sabotaging or destruction of some targets and buildings. So that's why if you have some sort of question, if one of their tactics is violent, for example, because they have some believers in anarchy, for example. So you might have a question about this, about tactics and tools of their movement or their organization, and whether or not they would accept these strategies. And if you need to investigate some violent incidents and events happened, for example, during that period, and you need to have a question about the role of the regime allies, so you need to come up with a wording that would encourage people to answer. So do you think the government might affect people getting into this violent tactic? So and then from their answers you might have a follow-up one. If they believe in this, so it's okay. If they don't, so how do you explain these kind of violent events or violent incidents happen that actually destroyed some building of some government buildings or some other NGOs building? And then if you have if you work with civil society organizations and you need to touch upon an issue of funding and fundraising, for example, if you need to think about how you phrase this, because some you have information or knowledge about the context, if there is kind of mutual accusation between different political groups or different political movements, people or the organizations that they are related to, leftist parties and other organizations that related to right-wing parties. So they might have different source of funding. So you need to ask to what extent this would affect their policy agenda and action plan. So you need to think about how you phrase, how you word, these questions in order to get people to talk. Then what kind of prompt and direction of prompting you might think about in order to get more information and more data that would help with the analysis or feedback into your research topic. So if you have an issue you need to cover about whether or not they actually participated in the protest or in the demonstrations for the sake of activism or for ideological commitment or for ideological reason or motivation, or they have some alternative vision and programs for they need the government to implement or to actually take an action toward implementing these social policies. So you might have some sort of questions in order to examine further the alternative visions they might have, and to what extent their perception of other successful social and economic policies in the region. For example, if they have a model they need to implement. For example, you might have different countries. You conducted some interviews in different countries, and you need to compare between the social, why these social movements, for example, were successful in some context, in Chile, for example, and in other contexts they failed. And you might have this notion about the alternative programs or perception about the successful social and economic policies, and about the other motivation about the ideological motivation of protest and demonstrations. So that's why you need to have some sort of questions in order to collect data or to gather data in order to cover these issues and these points. And then if they have some direction, or if they did have in their mind the potential of having negotiation with the government or not, because it relates to your examination of the successful if you have a criteria, kind of if you have specific criteria to examine the success of social movements, and one of them to what extent how they have they have in mind this kind of increasing their position in relation to the government in order to get to the negotiation table, and then they can get what they want. And then how they got access to decision-making circles and the relations with the members of the parliament or the Congress. So you need to have these kind of questions in your head. And sometimes you need to if you have elite interviews, so they might know your terminology, you speak the same language. But if you have some interviews with the the grassroots level, not only university students, but you need to you need to interview regular other participants, and you don't know about their educational background. So just make sure that you speak the same language. So don't use some technical language that they might not get. And in the beginning you might have what's called informed consent, because it's kind of a contract between you as a researcher and the participant in the fieldwork, and the interviewee or the participant in social group, focus group, for example. So it's kind of a contract. So you inform them about your topic, and you are not going to use, any information or any data collected from the interview for a different purpose. You might use this for academic publication or for writing a dissertation or something like that, and then you might get their approval in order to participate in the interview, and to put them at ease, they can terminate the interview at any time. You're gonna have an audio, or you're gonna tape the interview, so you need to take their permission first, and if and offer them, give them a choice in order to, if you don't like to have something off record or something, so you give them a chance, or give them a choice in order to do that. And then you can have initial tests, if you have a supervisor or something, so you need to if you have a list of questions or something, so you need to give the questions to your professor or to your supervisor in order to double check on the wording and sequence and this kind of as we're going to see later, you must not have kind of leading questions. So you're not allowed to lead the participants toward a specific direction to get the information or the answer you need to get. So these are general information or organizational point that you need to have, regardless of the type of the field work you're gonna you need to conduct, interview, semi-structured interviews, or structured, unstructured interviews, or focus groups. So you need to have these kind of guidelines anyhow. Then we are going to go in some detail about semi-structured interviews and focus groups. So we focus on two main tools when it comes as to collect data for qualitative analysis that would help with the analysis, with answering or mastering evidence for your research topic. So the semi-structured interviews. So we know what semi-structured interviews means, the semi-structured means, with the list of these kind of questions you ask in the same way, with kind of flexibility in order to have probing and clarifying questions. So the main purpose, again, it's to collect some data from how people perceive, or the people conceptions and people values that would emerge from their conversation with their speech and with their narrative. So it's a process. It's kind of a conversation, but with a purpose. So you need to collect data from this process. You have a conversation with a respondent, with a participant, through which knowledge about something, about the social world, or about social and political kind of phenomenon is constructed. So the issue here, it's kind of the construction of knowledge about a certain issue or certain social and political phenomenon. So here is at this stage, I need to spend some a little bit on this construction of knowledge about social world, and you have two main perspectives, on the construction of knowledge and the role of the interviewer in this process, because you are an active component in construction of this knowledge, and it's kind of interaction between you and the participant or the respondent. So to what extent, what kind of role you play in order to produce this knowledge. So you have in literature, So you have like, and it depends on, it has like kind of philosophical underpinning as well. But anyway, you have like two main trends, on this. So you have like how the knowledge, is being constructed. So some people, or like one group, like one team believes that the knowledge is kind of constructed in the interview because of the interaction between you as a researcher and the participant in the interview. And some other people like believe in the knowledge as kind of a pre-existing, phenomenon. So you don't construct this in the process of the interview. It's kind of, it was like objectively there before you have this conversation with the interviewee. So it's pretty much related actually to how active or passive your role is or should be as a researcher. So it's like your active or passive role. It depends on kind of your philosophical orientation, or but the literature, like had like two main metaphors, like the minor one and the metaphor. It's about it's kind of it's like a metal. It's buried somewhere. It's like the knowledge is kind of like a buried metal, and as an interviewer, you need to kind of extract this knowledge or this like metal in order to that have like that might have some values, or which is like something is really valuable, and that would help you build some knowledge, or to explain your research, your to help you answer your research question. So it's something like it's something hidden, and it's uncovered, and it needs it needs you as a researcher to uncover it in uncontaminated way. So you need like to, by digging out these kind of roots, in order to get these kind of pieces of data, and you have to draw like some meaning out of it, unpopulated by any kind of leading questions. So you have like an active role in the interview, but you kind of you try to get like uncontaminated data or uncontaminated analysis. So you don't need to assign your own meaning to the answers you got from the interview, from the interviews while analyzing this. So try your best in order to analyze in an objective way, and try to, and this is it's related to the way you ask the questions and the way you have like follow-up questions, in order to make sure that the participants actually meant what they said. So it's like, that's why it's a conversation with purpose. So it's not like you talk to someone, but you need to you really need to increase the explanatory power of the of your approach, or in order to offer like plausible answer to your research question. So the main purpose is like to gather some information that might increase the leverage, the explanatory leverage of the approach you adopted in the research. And then the traveler metaphor. So it's related to the constructivist tradition, like the domain, or like these kind of traditions in political and social science. So for them, it's like knowledge is not like a pre-existing construct, or like it's not a pre-existing given, but it's created and negotiated in the process of the interview. So the interviewer has a journey with the interviewee, and out of this, by exploring and developing kind of stories, so the they extract meaning, or the actually the assign meaning out of the interviewee stories in order to develop or to interpret the data. So it's kind of with the flow of the conversation. So they have like they might get like new insights, and then these insights, you know, might be kind of or it might involve kind of transformative elements or dimensions. So the researcher here has like more active role in constructing, you know, this knowledge as an active like player, you know, in order to develop a meaning out of the collected data. I personally like I'm interested in like the first perspective. It's like how to try like how to have like a specific guidance in order to make sure that you don't like, you know, you have like uncontaminated, you know, kind of data or uncontaminated analysis. So it depends again on the question you ask, but it's there, like, you know, especially people like, you know, work on like feminist movements, for example. In a way, they have like this perception about, you know, you don't need to, or you don't have to objectify the respondents or the participants in the interview. But again, it's not about, you know, objectification. So you might deal, you know, with the participants as human beings, but without, you know, contaminating the data or the analysis. We're gonna like talk about this later when we talk about, you know, the way you ask questions. So the key feature here is like you have a structure, so you have like phrasing and wording with flexibility. So you have like, you know, some space for following up and propping, as I mentioned, and you need to have some space in order to investigate or to like to know more about the factors that underpin like the participants' answers, and then how they offer like more explanatory evidence in order to make sure that the actually they actually elaborated on their motives or their attitudes or their perceptions, you know, of something. So actually, this kind of flexibility, it gives you some space in order to explore in the conversation and in order to make sure to get like, you know, to make some precise analysis, to make sure that you propped or you explored, you know, the all the dimensions of the topic under investigation. So you need to know about, you know, the beliefs of like, you know, the participants, the students, you know, that participated in the social movements in Chile. You need to know about, you know, the reasons and the feelings about, you know, participating, you know, in these participations. So you need to ask some questions in order to help, you know, in order to help with building, you know, the evidence, or to collect some evidence and to furnish more kind of explanatory evidence for framing, as I mentioned, you know, in the beginning, like with the framing approach. So it depends here on your like skills, like your mental and intellectual capacity in order to do that. So you have to participate, you know, or to practice active listening. Active listening is very important because it's you need to listen carefully to the answers, and you need to digest and comprehend, you know, these to understand well, you know, these answers. So it's because like you have this conversation, for an interview, so you need to get some explanatory evidence. So that's why you need to make sure to pay attention to the listening process in order to make sure that you get what the precise meaning as much as you can. And then you need to have a clear and logical mind as well. Why this is important? Because you need to intervene or to think quickly in order to ask if you have an essential point the participant actually raised, so you need to intervene quickly in order to follow up or to clarify what the participant is saying, and how they actually how you formulate these kind of relevant and essential questions is very important. So if for example they mentioned something about if they mentioned something about in a different setting, not in Chile, for example, that they don't have this legacy or history of social movements, and they mentioned something about the newcomers, to politics or something like that, and how actually they didn't have any because of they didn't have any previous experience, so they didn't develop any kind of vision. So it did correspond to your point on framing thing, how they actually offered the diagnosis, and they started talking about a different country that they had this kind of legacy and the experience in social movements, so that's why they achieved more outcomes than similar movement in this country. So here they made one sort of new point about perhaps some other factors about the legacy of authoritarianism or the previous experience in under authoritarian regime, and how this affected the framing process. How they affected how social movements actually perceive their own problems, and how they perhaps they acted randomly or reacted randomly against the government policies without having any kind of vision in head or particular direction to move towards. And then so that's why you need to, so you had a follow-up question regarding this point about the heritage, or perhaps it's related to previous experience in social movements, and how this improved on the framing process, or the as the literature mentions, signifying agent, how they actually articulated their ideas and transmitted this and instilled this in the society in order to attract supporters, in order to compare between different settings and different contexts. Good memory as well is very important, because if you you might need to take kind of mental notes in order to link things up, where you need to seek further clarification and more elaboration, for example. So if the participant mentioned something about different NGOs or different social movements, that they had the similar objectives, but they have they tools. So you need, and then they mentioned something about they got along. They contacted or reached out to different social movement or NGO that had a similar orientation with or some strategic or some strategies or some tactics, violent tactics that they rejected, and that's why they didn't get in touch with the previous organization. So that's why perhaps this they might have a new variable, or they might have some sort of other reasons, that help them to reach out to other NGOs, to have a coalition, or to have a coordination with this NGO and not the other one. So that's why you need, you mentioned before, that this organization is adopted, this anarchical orientation, or this ideological orientation, and that's why you refuse to get in touch with. And this organization is kind of defines itself as a leftist, and they did believe in direct action and violent actions as well. So why you how they differed, from each other, and perhaps you might come with like a different variable about. Perhaps they have this vision and orientation as well, and they adopted this strategically in order as one of the tools in order to pressure the government, not for the sake as anarchical political forces that they perceive as an end of itself, not as a tool, for example. So you need to link things up, and you have to have a good memory in order to have kind of powerful explanation, or to have explanatory evidence that would help with the writing your research. And then curiosity and respect for the participant. So that's the thing, you don't need to objectify, you don't need to deal with people as data. Actually the purpose is collecting data, but you need to have kind of respect, the certain level of respect, for the participant as individuals. So you have to listen to their you have to develop this environment of trust in order to help them, or in order to get your message that you really care about, you really have this desire in order to understand social movements or student movements from from their perspective, why they participated and how, even if you read this already in the books and the articles, but you need to understand how they participated, how they came up with the decision, how they actually coordinated effort with other NGOs. So you need to show this kind of respect of the individuality of the participant and their own kind of identity as well. So even if they give answers that you don't like, so it's okay, leave them, to this is part of your research. You need to collect data that would help with the research regardless of your stand or your viewpoint. And needless to say, you have to be totally dedicated and focused during the interview period, and to pay attention to what the participants saying. So this is this is for your research, and this is to show kind of respect to because you really need to know about the topic from their perspective. So that's why you need to pay attention to the details. And don't if they say something, so try not to sum up or to actually to finish this off by intervening or interrupting the interviewee in order to to move to the other question, or to rush to rush him or her into your other questions. And then you should develop some skills in order to manage the interview itself, the process of the interview. As I mentioned, even if you have a role to play, even if as a listener, by the way you ask questions, or you have follow-up questions, and you have to explore more, so you have an active role, at least as a facilitator, in order to enable the participant to talk about the experience and the view, his viewpoint. So actually, and the attitudes and the motivations and the thoughts as well. So you need to make sure that all the subject areas, or all the issues or all the dimensions are covered to the required depth. If you don't get if you get superficial answers, so this actually you need to come up with other questions or different questions in order to get more information about the topic you investigate, in order to get full coverage of the topic, the objectives and the thematic topics and subtopics you actually listed in the beginning in your guide. And you have to have, like, part of this, like, you have to allocate, some time, for each questions. Like, each question might have like 10 minutes, or in order to fully, explore, the viewpoint and the ideas of the participant. So if the respondents, or the spend like, some more, or like more time on the question, so you need to get them back, to the topic. So you need to steer the conversation back to your topic, in order to make sure, that like all the questions, they have like, the time, you devoted, or the you allocated to them. Or you might have, as a facilitator as well, and as like you have like another like role to play. If the respondent, for example, you feel like, the participant like is not doesn't want to talk, but you have like informed consent, and actually like he like signed, this kind of informed consent, or the contract between you and him. So you can help by like playing like more stimulating role, how to get them, into the topic again, and reminding the participant that they actually, agreed to take part in the field work or the interview. So that's why you ask, more questions in order to get them to talk, or actively engage in the conversation. And you try your best. But sometimes, you have like, some participants that you don't get like, some satisfactory answers. But yeah, it's like you have to get yourself prepared, and then you will have like, different interviews in order to get, more explanatory evidence. But sometimes, it depends as well on the interviewee as well. So the stages, and you conduct the interview in stages. So first, like, as again, you need to give like kind of introduction. So you need to like, again, to state, the purpose of the research. So here I'm working on the motivation, or the attitudes, or the of the social movements, and why they actually they participate in demonstrations against governments for social and economic reasons. So you give like, a summary about your topic, and then how to assert again, or to reassure them confidentiality, that you're not going to share this, for a different purpose. This is for like, academic or research purpose. And then you ask for permission to have like, to take the interview. And again, like, you have like these opening questions and contextual information, and in the process you have your follow-up and props in order to get, more information, and then like introduce, this final questions or gradual ending, in order to get them to finish, the business. And then you have to reassure the confidentiality again, in order to make sure that you will abide by the informed consent, the contract, you had with the participant. So here, because of like the type of questions, you need to ask, so you have like from introduction, then follow-up and propping, and these kind of questions. So you need to balance, the depth and breadth. So sometimes you need to get like general information about something, and in some areas you need to get more details. You need to go in like to dig deeper into, these areas or these domains, in order to get more information to explore more. So that's why there are like, from the literature, like in order to balance out, these two purposes. So you have like content mapping and content mining. For the mapping thing, so you need to map out, the dimensions and the issues of your topic. So for example, like you need to get more information about the main objectives of pressuring the government, why they do care about, why they bother about that. And so perhaps like they might have like this kind of particular demands regarding educational and social policies, but perhaps it's kind of like a punishment, of the electoral constituencies, or the as like a citizens, they needed to punish, the government for some wrong policies or some like different directions. For example, in Chile, because of, if you remember, like the coalition of parties that they won the plebiscite against Pinochet, it was like a coalition of the center left, and they actually proceeded with the economic liberalization and market reform policies. So they actually, some of their electoral or social bases, they got disappointed or way too dissatisfied with the policies. So perhaps it's a kind of penalization. They needed to penalize, and during that year, like the social movements actually erupted or broke out in waves, and in 2010 or 11, so they voted for a right-wing government. So it was kind of a penalty voting as well. So you need to investigate, like to map out perhaps like, they are dissatisfied with the economic or social policies of the government, but they might have different objectives in order to pressure the government as well. So you need to map out, the dimensions, the issues, and you don't need, this is like, it falls beyond, the scope of your research, the penalty voting, but it's kind of, you need to get like, a general overview or different dimensions of the topic. And then they have like, the main tactics and strategies. And you need to know, like, what kind of strategies they have. They might use like radio stations in order to disseminate, their ideas. They might have like, party conferences, in the like outdoors activities in order to raise people's awareness. And so you need to map out, these different strategies and tactics that help them to pressure the government. And then other perspective that might influence, these strategies and goals. They might, they started out. You could discover that they start out with this kind of peaceful tools, and then they turned into violent actions against the government. So you need to know in the beginning, what kind of issues or what kind of dimensions you need to have like a general map, about, and then what kind of issues you need to dig out more details in order to get an access to the meaning and to get more deep understanding about these issues. So like you need to give a space, for them to cover, different perspectives. So you need to ask, like, about initial expectations, and you need to follow up on how they achieved or not, their the purpose, and then reflections on the experience from other countries. So if you actually are you interview like different participants of the social movements, in the student movements, so you need to ask about their initial experience and their own reflection, and then you have like follow-up questions about the how efficient the tools or the strategies or they deployed in order to achieve their goals, and then any experience they learned from, or any lessons drawn from different other or other countries' experiences. And then you need like what's called like content mining. You need to get more details in order to, again, to double check on the meaning or to access meaning and deep understanding. So here, so you have like a broad line, like you have like of the general map of the dimensions and the issues, and then you're interested in particular dimensions or that actually interest you more, and they are like beneficial or fit more into your research project. So you here have like, you know, what they call amplifying prop. So perhaps like they mentioned something about, you know, changing mind about the strategies from peaceful to violent strategies, for example. And then you need to know, like, you know, more information about this. So you can ask about, you said that in the beginning, you know, you started to fill petition and you agreed with the Bachelet government, for example, in order to have this deliberative commissions, in order to have negotiation between student movements or participants in the movement and the government from the governing coalition. Can you tell me more about how efficient and how you assess or how you reflect on the experience of with the negotiation with the government, or with participating in this kind of deliberative, you know, commissions, or they called it like something like that. And can you give me an example about what kind of issues you managed to compromise, and what gave you? And then when they mentioned something about, you know, the government was just trying to co-opt, you know, the student movements into compliance, so you need more clarification on this, like they accept to negotiate, and this is like essential part of your research, so you need what gave you this kind of impression. And then they might mention something about they reached an agreement, you know, regarding something, and then the commission like reported this to the parliament or to the Congress in order to the particular kind of commission in order to study or to investigate and then to formulate policies, and that's why they shelved, you know, these recommendations. And then like exploring or explanatory approach. So you need to know, like, how did, so again, like with the tactics and strategies of the social movements, so you need to know how actually they diversified, you know, these kind of tools depending on the interaction with the government. So then, like when the Congress, or when they actually, after the dissolution of these deliberative commissions, how did you responded? How did you respond to, or in order to investigate actually how they responded to the government, you know, action, manipulative action, or something like that? So you need to examine or to explore more about, you know, their action, you know, that how they actually transformed, or they turned into how they actually made this transition from petitioning and negotiating to like committing direct action against, you know, the government. Actually, in one of their demonstrations, they burned the Ministry of Education. So that's how did they get there? And then if they mention something about, you know, corruption of members of Concertation, or the socialist, or the Socialist Party, so you need to examine more why did they think, you know, about that, in order to get, you know, more evidence or more incidents that helped, you know, or actually pushed the participant in order to come up with this so like this decision, or this viewpoint. And then if they mention something about, you know, the Socialist Party or the center-left parties in the Concertation, so you need to investigate more about, you know, the relationship with the parties, how political elites or how the leaders of these parties actually alienated, you know, their social bases by focusing on the political process without paying attention to their role. Again, you know, this is very important to your hypothesis or your theory about how people, like, you know, go to a different strategy if they don't have like an institutional channel to articulate their demands, through which they can articulate their demands, and then how did and then you can ask why did they decide in order to follow these tactics in the course of the demonstrations. You might have you need to get more clarifying questions as well. If they mention something about for example, people they are the members of leftist parties, they might use terminologies used by Gramsci, for example. So they might use war of positions, or it's kind of how to gain a hegemony over society. So you need more questions in order to qualify to clarify the language they use. And then if you need more details about something, if they mention something about corruption, if they increase the government actually decided to increase, for example, the tuition fees or the transportation fees, so that's why, and they had some incidents, how they actually use this money in order to support private education, for example. So you need more details on this. You need to get them, you need to ask some questions in order to get more details about that. What kind of policies they adopted, how they offered the legal pretext or the legal framework. They actually designed kind of legal framework in order to enable them to do that. And then if you discovered that there's kind of illogical or inconsistency actually, or kind of illogical sequence, so you might need to clarify on this. For example, they mentioned something about participation or negotiating with the government, with these kind of deliberative committees, and that was after the round happened, or the wave happened in 2006, and then they mentioned something happened in 2011, as if it happened in 2006. So that's why, yeah, but this happened during the first term of the Bachelet government, for example. So why did you mention this in her second term? So you need more, if you found some illogical or inconsistent information or evidence, so you can ask for clarification about it. Yeah, and this is very important. One of the guys, after they formulating your questions or phrasing your questions, and you have your own guide, and that offers you kind of signposts. The wording of the questions or the phrasing is very important. So the very important, or the most important thing, you must avoid leading questions. So you play an active role in the interview, but in order to get uncontaminated, answers, so don't influence the answer in the first place. So don't the leading question. The problem with the leading questions are these questions you need to get kind of full answers, but you don't intend to influence these kind of answers. So don't suggest possible answers. For example, if you need to investigate the participation, the how they evaluate the students participation in the deliberative committees with the concertation with the government. So you might mention something about you must be angry at the government. I'm don't lead the participant to don't suggest an answer on his, don't put words in their mouth. And then if you need when the government actually, instead of responding to their their demands or to their needs in order to play more, like to give the state, more active role or more important role in the education, subsidizing, the education, for example. So don't like where you, for example, like when you ask about the attitudes, and the tactics about the movement. So that's why you had like to decide, to resort to the direct action or the violent actions when the government, carried out that policy. So instead, like, how did you feel, and how did, the deliberation or the consultation between the movement, the members of the parties or the organization actually came up, with different strategy or tactic to deal with the government after, fake negotiation with the government. So like, so you have like the wording and the phrasing is very important in order to get like, more like to play more objective role in order to get more precise information from the perspective of the participants of the in the student movements. And with the phrasing as well, you have to, it has to be clear, like clarity of wording. So in order to guarantee, this clarity of phrasing or wording, so avoid theoretical or abstract, wording or like, these kind of concepts. Like you need to break it down into its elements, like the framing. It's in the literature, it's kind of a signified agent, that it has like, the participant or the social movements, they have like, kind of meaning they need to transmit, or like, the message you need to transmit, and how like, the society received, this message. So by like adopting, some sort of discourse with, we're going to talk about this, next lecture, next week. But for now, it's like doing you this, how you, how actually you signify, kind of, or assign meaning, to the government action. So don't ask, these type of questions. It's like, when the government, carried out these policies, how the party or how your movement or the NGO actually responded, to this. And this don't offer like, any introduction, it's don't get like, don't offer any like preface to your question. So people might get confused about the question. So try to be like as straightforward as possible. So it's like this would like, so in order, you're trying to get more like data, or to collect data on the framing thing. So don't offer like an introduction about the role of social movements in offering like a discourse or offering a frame, something like that. It's like how the social movements actually picked or selected particular problem that actually gathered more support around this, as and you made some, or you refer to some other examples, in Bolivia or in other countries, how they selected, different issues in order to build, their case, or in order to make, to have a cause to fight for or to struggle for. So don't offer like, this kind of introduction to the questions, and ask, the question in a straightforward way, in order to see how or why actually they opted for this issue, and how actually, and then this will take me to the next point. Don't ask like double questions. Otherwise, people will get again confused, and they will answer them halves, or they pick, only one question to answer. So if you need to know like how actually they picked on, how they selected this issue about the educational policy, and then in another question, not in the same one, how they actually widened the scope from the educational policies in order to include other political demands like constitutional reform, for example. So this like, you have to break this down into two questions, not like one question. And never assume, needless to say, like, don't make assumptions, like in order to in order to get like uncontaminated data. So you need to never assume. So if you need to, if the information is very important to your research, so you can check, if you get it right. Yeah, and then don't intervene in the participants. It's out of respect and out of the flow of the conversation as well. If only the participant spends much time on one question and already you see like it's unnecessary kind of information or details, so you can like interrupt by saying like, can I take you back to the point when you said blah blah blah, and then you follow up on this, and then you take the like the interview process to the other direction, and like you keep like the like to make sure that you allocate you abide by the time you allocated in the beginning, and try to not to summarize the like the answers they got, because sometimes it looks like some sort of it involves some sort of you're patronizing the participant, and putting words in the participant's mouth as well. So don't do that, and don't finish off, as I mentioned, the answer. So let them talk, and if only they talk it to a different direction, so you can get them back to the right direction. Again, neutrality and avoidance of self-disclosure. So you need to get again the information you want, and you have to have to prepare some sort of questions in order to explore and to avoid the challenges. So again, like here, like you have to be neutral, but being neutral, yeah, if you get like an answer that for example the one of the participants in one of the interviewees, for example, mentioned something about other political party, and they described this party as I don't know, like fascist or something, and then the government, for example, is much more tolerant than this party that they didn't like. Actually, it's kind of the opposition party, but they didn't like. So instead of in order, if you disagreed on this, it's kind of it's not like an attractive view, or even it's wrong, but you need to investigate, to explore more. So you can ask, how did you come, to this belief, and why did you see it that way? So you need to you don't need to the participant doesn't need to to share or to hold the same viewpoint. So you need to be neutral.